Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Hey, youth workers, this is Doug Edwards with Youth Worker on Fire, and we've got a very special guest with me tonight, Dena Yohe. And Tom has been on before. It's been a while back, but I interviewed him and his wife. You can go back to episode 50 and you can listen to that. For those of you who have never heard anything about the Yohes before, I'm going to have Tom catch us up and tell us about where this all began and why he's written this next book, but basically about their past, what brought them to this point with their children, and where they are now. Tom, thanks for being here, and catch us up to date.
All right. Thanks, Doug, and thanks for having me. Dean and I have been married, we'll be 45 years next March, and we've been serving in pastoral ministry for a number of years. Then we joined then Campus Crusade For Christ, now Cru, served with them overseas and also in the U.S. for a number of years. We started having issues with our daughter, our middle daughter. We have 3 children. At age 12, she cut herself. And this was, 20 some years ago. And I had never heard of such a thing. Didn't know how to react. Didn't know what it meant. I was just baffled. And we navigated through that, and things seemed to be okay. But as she got into her middle school years, she began doing some things, cutting school, hanging out with some questionable people. And then by high school, things had really gone south. She got into drugs and alcohol. She was still doing self-injury. And then she moved out, lived on the streets for a while, was sexually abused, and things were really, really tough. So after her senior year, it was just one crisis, it seemed like, after another for a number of years. And we were just lost. We didn't know what to do, how to get her help or how to help ourselves. Finally, I think Dena decided to attend a 12-step program, and reluctantly I went too. And it was very isolating because we were working with a missionary organization. We didn't know anyone else that was going through the issues we were going through with our daughter. And it was hard to find people to talk to. They didn't understand. They weren't going through anything or hadn't experienced anything like this. And they were talking about their kids graduating from high school and going off to college. We're thinking about where to send her for treatment. And that wasn't a good conversation to have at parties or get-togethers. After a number of years, she did agree to go into treatment. She did okay. And during the treatment, she did the full time. She relapsed shortly after. And that occurred several more times. She'd go into treatment, she'd get out, relapse. And that just took place for a number of years. Dena and I were just devastated. We were clueless. We went through all the questions people would ask themselves. What did I do wrong? How can we help her? Who can we talk to? And the guilt was there, the embarrassment, the isolation, and all of that. So that's basically our situation with our daughter. She's currently in her mid-30s. She did have a child out of wedlock. However, that child has changed her life. As soon as she found out she was pregnant, she stopped everything, cold turkey, and has not gone back. And she's a wonderful mom, and she's doing everything she can to be healthy and to raise a healthy young boy. And we have the privilege of having them with us. So we get to see him grow, experience new things on a daily basis. He keeps us laughing. He's a natural mood lifter. He's a great guy. And we've never heard our daughter laugh so much and so, I guess, just a purity of laughter that we hadn't heard in decades. So we're in a good spot right now. There are still complications with the birth father, but she's coping with those, and we're trying to navigate through that as well.
So you guys have been through quite a bit, and you're in a good place now. There was a movement that was out for your daughter for quite a while. Is that movement still going on?
It is. It's still going on. The name of it is To Write Love on Her Arms. And it was very interesting, Doug. So Renee was out in the streets, but she had gone to church and met an ex-drug addict and heard his testimony. And we had approached her. I know this is sounding a little confusing. We'd approached her about going into treatment, and she had agreed and went to church the night before she was to leave. She heard this young man's testimony and approached him afterward. And he said, do the time. And when you get back, we'll be your community. We'll be your support. We'll help you, connect with us. And she agreed, she would do that. Well, she got out of treatment. She did relapse, went out on the streets. But this guy was able to keep in touch with her. And he would call us and update us and let us know, Renee's okay, or Renee's doing this or this or that. And after several months, he gave us a call one night, and he said, a group of us from our young people's church service are going to have a come to Jesus talk with Renee. And so pray for us. So they went to 4 or 5 of them, knew where Renee was staying at the time. And the people that she was living with, they pulled all their money and bought a whole bunch of drugs, and they were going to have a big drug party. And they knocked on the door, and there was this kind of like battle back and forth going on for her. The people with the drugs and stuff saying, oh, come on, you don't need that. And they're begging her to come on, you don't need that. And so she said, yes, I'll go with you, and I'll go back into treatment, but I'll go tomorrow. I'm going to party tonight. And, well, okay. Well, she got so drunk and high and stuff like that. When morning came, she felt so guilty. She just cut up her arms with razor blades and stuff. So when they came and got her and took her to treatment, they wouldn't take her. First of all, she wasn't detoxed. And second, she had fresh wounds on her arms, and they said it might trigger other people in the program. Bring her back in 5 days. Well, Renee was not willing to come home to us. And so that group of people just took her in and stayed with her for 5 days and did a bunch of stuff with her, some fun, some went to Bible studies and church. And at the end of that 5 days, she went into treatment. And one of the men who was there was writing a blog. Then it was MySpace. And he wrote a story. And he also worked for a t-shirt company. And so he decided they would print t-shirts with the story on the inside back of the t-shirts. And then the t-shirt, would have the name of the story called To Write Love on Her Arms. And they sold those t-shirts basically to help pay for treatment. And it went viral. And they received so many donations after a while that they had become a nonprofit. And now they're very active in helping people in suicide prevention, and also to help them through depression, mental illness, or other things that they're struggling with.
Which is absolutely amazing. And, I know that you guys were in the pastorate and then in the mission field in Russia, and There's so many more details. That's why those of you listening need to go back to that episode with Dena and Tom Yohe, which is Yohe, on Youth Worker on Fire. But Tom, here you are. You've written a book, and you've written it for fathers. And it is a youth worker podcast, but dads are listening to this, grandparents and educators. We know all kinds of people listen to this podcast. And prodigals are who youth workers end up working with all the time. And so and many of these guys there's a few in student ministry that last 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years in student ministry because that's their mission. They're not just on a job or a ministry or a stepping stone ministry. It's their mission. The average youth pastor lasts about 18 months. The average volunteer lasts about a year. Not long enough to sustain a program, and that's why we do this podcast, to say go long, pay the price. It takes 5 years to establish. And so prodigals are something that we deal with because those of us who know, because we're all prodigals, according to Jesus and according to Scripture. We've all gone our own way, and many of us are hidden prodigals or we're silent prodigals, but there's those like Renee who are open and, quite frankly, who Jesus seems to deal with best because they are open to telling their story or realizing that they are in need. Tell me about this book, why you wrote it. And right here on the cover, I see it says bestseller, Amazon.com. That's a big deal. And so tell me about the book and what's happening with it.
Well, Dena and I began a ministry called Hope for Hurting Parents, and we've been working with parents because we found that there's not a lot of help or support for the parent going through this. There's treatment centers and all kinds of things. And of course, there's counselors, but a lot of parents don't feel maybe the need for counseling. But so we started that, and we started support groups. And over time, I just felt that there were certain things that God did in my life along the journey with Renee that stood out. They were pivotal, and I would say was a moment of clarity for me. It helped me to know what my next right step would be that I should do. And so I compiled some of those in this book, and in hopes that other people might gain from those insights, but God would even open up their heart and get some moments of clarity for their own. And while it's written from a father of a prodigal, and so I'm hoping dads would resonate with it, but it's for everyone. I mean, I know lots of moms have read it as well and benefited from it too. That's basically why I wrote the book. It's a short read, which is good. A lot of men don't like to read long, lengthy books. Some do, but it's a very short read, and there's only 12 chapters, brief chapters, and it highlights these moments. And at the end of each chapter, it has like a summary, and then 3 little questions that you can use as like a self-study.
No, that is excellent, and men are that way as a whole. And they do need something short that they can sink their teeth into and get in and get out and come back to, because men are men. They're different. Fathers are different than mothers, are different than women, in spite of what's going on generationally and in our society worldwide, and especially in the United States. Men are still men and women are still women, and men need other men to speak into their lives. And especially when they're dads, just like you're doing. And so this book, I know, is a timely book, and it's especially important that it's broken into pieces, and it's broken into pieces by the father, the dad, you, Tom, who's been broken into pieces.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of your pieces.
Yeah, one of the struggles we had, and we realized that as we were going through this, there's while Renee was in the house, of course, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of disagreement. Shall we say yelling, things being said that probably shouldn't have been said. And, it puts a stress on the marriage as well. And oftentimes, the prodigal is very skilled at being able to figure out how to play one parent against the other to take the attention off themselves.
Yes.
And then to get the parents fighting, over something.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that, oddly enough, I was a single person in college taking a pastoral ministry course. And the professor made a statement many, many years ago that just stuck with me. And he said, men and women at the time too, crisis of any kind, guard your marriage. And that came back to me. I go, we need to guard our relationship. We need to build our relationship and grow our relationship in the midst of what we're going through, or it could tear us apart. And then the enemy is getting 2 for 1 more like. So we made sure we were having consistent date nights. We went to marriage conferences. We read books. We took some classes at the church that were designed to help build marriages. And so that was very important. It's important for couples to be on the same page when they're dealing with a prodigal. Because as I said, they know how to find the one that, you don't quite you agree with, the dad or the mom or whatever. And they'll just exploit that. So we spent a lot of time alone in our room hashing through what are the boundaries that we're going to set, what are the decisions, what are the directions we're going to take. And we wouldn't talk to Renee about those until we had come to a point of agreement that we were on the same page.
And that's very good and very unique, I think, because this type of crisis and people going through less crisis than you and Dena have gone through, and your children have had marriages fall apart, going through less than this. And so it is an amazing event that your marriage has stayed together. And I think it is very clarifying of what couples need to do by you saying this on this podcast, and those who will listen and use this as a tool to help other dads and moms stay husbands and wives together. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for writing it. One thing that I remember you saying that we often forget about the siblings who are seemingly doing well, but are actually not doing well, with their hearts being ripped out too during this process with their sibling, with their sister or brother. So one reason that people need to go back and listen to the other episode is y'all go into that. Y'all talk about that, and you talk about some of the things that happened that brought healing. Any other things concerning the book? Is there a particular one that just really resonates with you all the time?
Well, I get a lot of comments about one that I call "Can They Carry the Suitcase?" And it was taken from a curriculum that True had designed to be taught overseas in the former Soviet Union. And so that's some of the context is that where a father actually was talking to an older daughter and talking about, we'll say, the facts of life. A younger daughter heard some of it, and she approached the dad and said, "Dad, when are you going to give me the talk?" And he goes, not now. He just kind of brushed her off. Well, later on, they were taking a train ride to a relative, and when they arrived at the station, the dad asked the younger daughter to reach up and pull their suitcases down from the overhead. And the little girl said, "Dad, I can't do that. That suitcase is too heavy. It might fall and hurt me." And he goes, "You're right." And he pulled her up on his lap and said, "I would never ask you to do anything that would hurt you that I know that you're not ready for." Well, that little parable just struck me, because oftentimes parents who are going through this don't know who they can talk to safely, because they often get a lot of guilt statements, like, you must have caused this. What did you do wrong? You didn't raise your kid right, and what have you. And all that does is increase their pain.
Yes.
And so they have to learn to know who can carry the weight of their experiences and story that they can share with, and not everybody can. And that's no fault. We're not blaming people. We're just saying, as a matter of fact, our stories are too heavy, and there are people who just can't handle that right now for whatever reason. They have their own experiences they're walking through in their own life. But we need to find safe people, confidential people, who will guard our privacy and our child's privacy, that we can share with. And that's why basically we started our support group, is to give a place where people can come. They know that the other people in the group are safe people. They understand them. They get them. They don't blame them. They don't put guilt on them. And we try to become the best listeners we can be. And that's basically what our ministry of Hope for Hurting Parents is, to try to get these support groups going in all around the country, so people can find a place to process and grow through the pain and experiences they're going through.
One thing that I've talked to other parents who have gone through this as well, and that is that when they do open up, when they do let some people know, and most of the time we've talked about that, you and I have as well, that there are very few safe places, very few. But the people, when they hear you, that have been hiding because they knew no one would understand, come out of the woodwork. I'm going to guess you've had people come to you that have gone, that you never thought in a million years possibly were going through it, and they were going through it as well. But they had been hiding it. And so is that what you found?
Yeah. Isolation, probably over embarrassment and guilt, is a big, big problem.
It is. It's hard to figure out which counselors you can trust, which friends you can trust. You find out who your friends are. I mean, talk about that. How do you handle, how did you guys handle the loss of friends that might be able to help other dads and moms? How did y'all handle that?
Well, it was a shock, actually, because I did lose a friend that I thought I was close with, and let me know pretty quickly, or anytime I saw him, that he was too busy. He had other things he had to get to, and didn't really have any time for me. And it was a struggle. In fact, that's why we ended up going to a 12-step group, because that was the only place where there was some identity. A lot of the people in those groups were dealing with spouses, or friends or what have you, but they weren't dealing with their child.
Mm-hmm.
After time, we had to learn how to forgive. And then, when this suitcase parable came around, it helped me to let go and be far more compassionate and forgiving toward those people. And in a sense, I'm just saying, like, I don't know what maybe was going on in their lives at the time.
Yes, yeah.
And so, again, I don't want to put guilt, on other people because they can't handle it. But, we found that I think sometimes opening up just a little bit at a time and just kind of observe the reaction, and how they respond back to you. And if you sense that maybe they're not getting it or they're not understanding it, then don't go any further, and pull back and change the subject, go on to other things.
That's interesting. A thought came to my mind too. There's a lady by the name of Vanessa Van Edwards, and she is a body language expert. You can find her on YouTube. She's one of the most clear people on that subject I've ever seen. And she said they analyzed over 490 plus contestants or moments, moment by moment on Shark Tank. They noticed that if people from a distance waved at the sharks, and this was consistent, waved at the sharks before they got through the tunnel and said, "Hi, sharks," they were listened to better than anyone else who went through the tunnel, got in there, and was closer to them. And then she talked about, because of what we were going through with COVID-19, the isolation and everything, lots of Zoom calls and all that, that people were less likely to be, they felt almost intruded upon by having people too close to their phones, just their face showing, but they needed to be like half body, full body, then as time went on to go closer to the camera. It's one of those things of, we can't, as human beings, it sounded like can not take the right in your face, here's what I'm going through, here's it all at one shot. It's like most of humanity can only take a little at a time. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
And she's a body language expert. So when you're saying that, I'm seeing what she was talking about, and hopefully that's clear to you and to the audience that listens here. But we should give people space. That makes total sense, what you're saying to me.
That does touch on another topic that you mentioned. Because of the pandemic, our support groups, often, while they were meeting face to face, our group met in our home for over 10 years. But when COVID hit, we had to stop. And so we went to Zoom as an alternative. And we found actually that that's been very helpful, because if people have nothing, it's the next best thing. Being face to face or being in a room with other people in person is best. But in light of that, we found that Zoom calls have been very effective. And so we do have online support groups now. And we continue to do an online group as well as an in-person group, because you get people from all over the country and even in other countries getting on the calls.
Yes. And they feel safer.
Yes.
They're in their own home and they're choosing to be a part of wherever you are.
Exactly. And we get the same comment. They often will say, "I don't feel alone when I come into this room. And I'm with people who understand me, who get it, and who don't judge me." The Zoom actually is, but I think what you're saying, as far as positioning ourselves in the room, on the camera, we can learn from that.
Tell people how they get in touch with you, Tom. What's the best way, the safest way for you, and how do they do it?
Yes, just hopeforhurtingparents.com is our website. And if they want to email us, that's on the website, but they can email us at hopeforhurtingparents.com. We have a lot of resources on the website. We have, of course, it's more local, but we have a list of counselors. We have a list of organizations and other groups that can be beneficial for parents going through what we went through. hopeforhurtingparents.com, and contact us at hopeforhurtingparents.com.
There you go. So now you know how to get in touch with them, and you also know where to go get the book. Go to Amazon. Once again, it's an Amazon bestseller, Moments of Clarity, Wisdom from the Father of a Prodigal, Tom Yohe.
Just to mention that it benefits us and our ministry if they go through our website to order my book. It goes to a landing page that's best to order the book. And right now, I have a paperback and a hard copy, and the hard copy is on sale. I have a limited number of books up for sale, but they can order a paperback as well. But you can go to tomyohe.com or www.tomyohe.com and purchase the book that way, or go through our website to purchase the book.
Tom, I'm not going to take any more of your time tonight, but you have been more than helpful to not only myself, but to a lot of people around the country, around the United States, and around the world by sharing your story, your family story. I am so sorry for the pain that you're going through, that you've gone through. I'm glad that you're on this side of part of that pain, and there's a joy on this side. And so just want you to know I'm grateful for you being on this podcast and giving us your time.
Thank you, Doug. And again, it's God's doing, and it's His glory, because it's nothing we would have done or could have done to bring about the changes that took place or the growth that's taken place in our lives.
I know you mean that, and I appreciate that. All right, brother. Listen, God bless.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome, and I will talk to you again.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.